Sophie loved the quiet rhythm of her Boston apartment, the mornings with soft sunlight through the curtains, the evenings filled with distant music from neighbors, and the peaceful routine she had carefully built around herself. She never expected her life to change the day Daniel arrived, the new tenant in the apartment above hers. He was older, confident, and carried an energy that was both calm and magnetic, the kind that made people notice him without even trying. Their first meeting in the elevator was brief, just polite smiles and nods, but Sophie felt an unusual flutter she couldn't explain, a warmth that lingered long after he stepped out. Days passed, and small interactions began to fill her thoughts. She found herself hoping to run into him in the hallway or catch a glimpse through the mailroom window. One rainy evening, her heater broke, leaving her shivering, and she hesitated before knocking on Daniel's door, feeling a mix of nervousness and curiosity. He welcomed her warmly, letting her in, and though the visit was simple, helping fix the heater, the air between them felt charged, filled with unspoken emotions and a strange closeness she hadn't anticipated. As she left, soaked from the rain but smiling, she didn't realize Daniel's gaze lingered long after the door closed, hinting at a connection neither of them fully understood yet. Over the next few days, Sophie's thoughts constantly returned to him, the way he moved, the calm in his voice, and the small kindnesses he showed, like leaving little notes at her door or offering casual smiles in passing. Each encounter left her emotionally stirred, her heart racing in ways that were confusing but exciting. The ordinary world around her, her quiet apartment, her morning coffee, the soft hum of life outside, suddenly felt infused with anticipation, as if every moment might lead to another encounter with him. Sophie began to feel a pull she couldn't resist, a mixture of longing, curiosity, and a growing emotional connection. Even simple gestures like sharing an umbrella in the rain or laughing together in the lobby made her heart skip and left her drained in the most beautiful way. She realized her emotions were no longer just thoughts, they were becoming a deep, consuming attachment she hadn't expected to feel for a tenant she barely knew, and yet, Daniel's presence had already begun to change her life in subtle, profound ways, leaving her both excited and nervous for what might come next, knowing instinctively that this was only the beginning of something neither of them could ignore. As the days turned into weeks, Sophie found herself thinking about Daniel constantly. Replaying every small interaction in her mind, from the way he smiled in passing to the calm tone of his voice when he spoke, and she realized that even the most ordinary moments felt extraordinary when he was near. Their brief encounters in the hallway, accidental meetings at the mailbox, or casual greetings outside the building began to carry weight she hadn't expected, filling her with a quiet excitement and a nervous flutter she couldn't shake. Daniel, too, seemed affected. He started noticing the little things about Sophie, the way she laughed softly when surprised, the gentle way she arranged her packages, the spark in her eyes when she talked about her day, and he began leaving small, thoughtful notes at her door, little gestures that made her smile and sometimes blush despite herself. One evening, as rain poured down, they shared an umbrella in the lobby, standing close enough to feel each other's presence, and the conversation flowed easily, teasing and gentle, as if they had known each other far longer than they actually had. Sophie's heart raced, emotions mingling with anticipation and longing, leaving her both exhilarated and drained, because every smile, every glance, and every word from Daniel seemed to reach deep into her, stirring feelings she couldn't fully control or understand. Their interactions grew subtly bolder yet remained innocent and tender, with casual invitations to coffee or short walks becoming a regular part of their days, and Sophie felt herself drawn deeper into a connection she hadn't planned for but couldn't resist. She noticed the quiet ways Daniel paid attention to her, remembering little details she had mentioned, asking about things she had not even realized she shared, and it made her feel seen, appreciated, and strangely vulnerable at the same time. Even mundane things, like the sound of his footsteps in the hallway or the soft murmur of his voice while talking on the phone, began to occupy her thoughts, making her heart race and her days feel more alive than ever. One night, she found a small envelope slipped under her door, handwritten and simple, yet it carried a weight she couldn't ignore. "Can I see you tonight? There's something I need to tell you." Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement, curiosity, and nervous anticipation as she read those words, realizing that what they shared was no longer casual or fleeting but had become a deeper emotional bond, leaving her both hopeful and uncertain about what might come next. She thought about all the moments they had shared, the smiles, the laughter, the quiet understanding, and knew that Daniel had stirred something in her that was far more profound than attraction. It was a sense of connection, longing, and emotional intimacy that made her simultaneously happy and restless. The anticipation of seeing him that night consumed her thoughts, and as she prepared herself to knock on his door, she felt the unusual mix of nervousness, excitement, and vulnerability that comes when two hearts are quietly discovering each other. Sophie understood that this connection with Daniel was unlike anything she had experienced before. It was exhausting in the most beautiful sense, pulling her emotions in every direction, making her feel alive and tender all at once. As she stood in front of his door, hand trembling slightly, she realized that this was a moment of choice, a chance to step further into the unknown, to explore a connection that had already changed her world, and she knew that after tonight, nothing between them could remain the same, leaving her heart racing with anticipation and her mind filled with both hope and the soft ache of longing. Sophie hesitated for only a moment before knocking on Daniel's door that night, her heart racing in a way that made every breath feel heavier, and when he opened, his warm smile and soft eyes made her feel both calm and nervously excited at the same time. He welcomed her in, and as she stepped into his apartment, the familiar warmth of the room seemed to echo the strange comfort she felt in his presence, the way his home smelled faintly of coffee and books making her feel unexpectedly at ease. They sat together, the silence at first comfortable but charged with unspoken words, and then Daniel began to speak, gently opening up about his life, the solitude of frequent moves, the challenges of his career, the quiet moments where he realized he longed for someone to truly understand him, and Sophie found herself listening intently, heart open, feeling a connection grow with every word, every glance, and every pause between them. She shared her own stories too, small personal confessions, the fears she carried, and the dreams she sometimes thought too fragile to voice, and Daniel listened with a patience and focus that made her feel truly seen, as if her thoughts and emotions were not only important but cherished. The conversation stretched on for hours, flowing effortlessly from light-hearted laughter to deeper reflections, and Sophie noticed how her nervousness melted away, replaced by a profound sense of emotional closeness she hadn't expected, leaving her simultaneously exhilarated and exhausted in the most beautiful way. As they talked, their hands brushed occasionally, small gestures that made her heart leap, yet nothing crossed boundaries. They simply existed in each other's presence, learning and understanding, building trust and intimacy through the strength of emotional connection rather than physical touch. By the time Sophie finally left, the night had deepened, and the streets were quiet and glistening from the rain. She walked home slowly, feeling the weight of what had just happened, the emotional intensity leaving her both drained and strangely elated, her mind replaying every word, every look, and every subtle gesture, realizing that she had never felt so connected to someone so quickly. Yet, despite the exhaustion, she also felt a deep thrill, knowing that Daniel had opened his heart to her as she had to him, and the bond between them had grown stronger, a mixture of longing, understanding, and unspoken affection that neither could ignore. As she reached her door, a part of her wanted to run back, to linger in his apartment just a little longer, but another part of her savored the sweet ache of anticipation, knowing that this moment would linger in her thoughts and dreams for days to come. That night, as she lay in bed, her mind replayed the gentle rhythm of their conversation, the warmth of his gaze, and the subtle ways he had made her feel important, valued, and emotionally alive, and she realized that the connection they were building was unlike anything she had experienced before, intense yet tender, consuming yet comforting, leaving her heart full and vulnerable all at once. Sophie understood, in the quiet moments before sleep, that this emotional exhaustion was not a burden but a reflection of the depth of their bond, and she found herself longing for the next time she would see him, to continue the conversations, the shared laughter, and the delicate unfolding of feelings that had already begun to change her life. And as she drifted off, her heart both restless and content, she knew that Daniel had become more than a tenant or a casual acquaintance. He had become the center of her thoughts and emotions, a presence that had stirred her in ways she could not fully explain, leaving her wondering how much further their connection could grow, and what it might mean for both of them in the days to come. The days after that night seemed to move faster for Sophie, every moment filled with anticipation of seeing Daniel again, every interaction carrying an emotional weight that left her both excited and exhausted in the most wonderful way. Their connection deepened with each encounter, whether it was sharing a quiet coffee in the morning, walking side by side in the park, or exchanging small gestures that spoke volumes about their growing closeness. Sophie noticed how naturally their conversations flowed, how effortlessly they could sit in comfortable silence, and how every smile, glance, or light touch on the arm seemed to communicate emotions neither of them could fully express in words, and yet each moment left a mark on her heart that she could not ignore. Daniel, too, was visibly affected, attentive to every nuance of Sophie's moods, listening with genuine care, laughing softly at her jokes, and offering a presence that was calming yet stirring, making her feel seen and valued in a way that was rare and precious. One evening, they found themselves on Sophie's balcony, city lights stretching out before them, and the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Their conversation was gentle, teasing, and intimate, building trust and closeness as they shared thoughts, dreams, and fears that they had not revealed to anyone else. Sophie realized that the exhaustion she felt was not from stress but from the emotional intensity of feeling so connected, so understood, and so drawn to someone who seemed to awaken her heart in ways she hadn't expected. They spoke about life, ambitions, and the little things that mattered to them, and with every word, Sophie felt her feelings grow stronger, a mix of longing, admiration, and tender affection that was both thrilling and slightly overwhelming. Daniel reached out, his hand brushing lightly against hers, and in that small touch was a message of reassurance, warmth, and unspoken emotion that made her heart race and her mind swirl with possibilities. Sophie laughed softly, admitting that she had never felt so tired and alive at the same time, and Daniel mirrored her confession, saying that he, too, had never experienced such a deep and consuming connection with anyone before, leaving them both in a shared understanding of how rare and precious this bond was. As the night stretched on, they leaned back, shoulders touching, and allowed themselves to simply exist in the presence of each other, no words necessary, feeling a closeness that was both comforting and intense, filling the spaces in their hearts they had long thought empty. Sophie understood that love and connection did not always arrive like sudden storms. Sometimes it crept in softly, persistently, and insistently, changing the rhythm of life and leaving behind a beautiful exhaustion that was both emotional and exhilarating. That evening, as they finally parted for the night, the lingering warmth of their shared time stayed with her, a soft ache of longing and contentment that made sleep both a relief and a delay from the emotions still coursing through her. Sophie realized that Daniel had become an irreplaceable part of her world, someone whose presence had touched her heart in ways she had never imagined, and she understood that their story was not about fleeting moments but about a slow, deliberate unfolding of feelings, trust, and emotional intimacy that would shape the days to come. As she lay in bed that night, heart full, she thought about the gentle power of connection, the way someone could leave you emotionally exhausted while also making you feel alive, and she smiled at the realization that life had a way of surprising you with people who could touch your soul in quiet, persistent ways. The thought of seeing him the next day filled her with anticipation, a mix of nervousness and excitement, knowing that every encounter with Daniel left her heart racing, every smile and conversation building a bond that neither time nor circumstance could easily break. Sophie understood, with a clarity that both thrilled and humbled her, that emotional connections could be just as powerful as any other, and that Daniel had shown her a depth of feeling she had never experienced before, leaving her both exhausted and grateful for the intensity of it all. As she drifted to sleep, the city lights outside her window flickering like distant stars, she held on to the thought that some people enter your life not to pass through but to stay, and Daniel, with his calm presence and warm heart, had already begun to stay, leaving a lasting imprint on her heart, a beautiful exhaustion that was filled with hope, longing, and the quiet promise of more shared moments to come.